Kia ora, welcome back. Thank you again for spending time with us today on our Spotlight on Strengths Day. We are now in our final session for today, which is all about putting it all together, working through some really specific resources that we're going to share with you that will help you put into place not just the ideas, but the practicalities from the speakers that we've heard so far. We've had amazing ideas and insights from Dean this morning, from our champions, from our specialist teachers, and from Holly Gooch. So here are some more final resources for you to share practical tips and strategies about how we actually can focus on strengths in our classrooms. So the key questions are coming right back to these. What are the strengths we are noticing? And remembering that we're talking not just about good at reading, good at maths, but those underlying abilities and qualities, those interests and passions. And as Dean was talking about, making sure we are disputing those negative self-beliefs and those negative messages that our neurodivergent kids are hearing and telling themselves. So it's up to us to be noticing those strengths and mirroring them back at our students. Then we're going to look at how we actually teach with those strengths in mind, that our day-to-day in the classroom actions are keeping those strengths at the forefront. Then the real gold standard. It's not just noticing them. It's not just teaching with them in mind. It's developing them. As Holly was talking about, this is that final stage of plotting, being able to identify a next step so that students can specifically develop those strengths, not just have them noticed, not just have them acknowledged, but actually develop them. Plotting, which is a fantastic word in this context. So before we get started on this noticing and teaching and developing, though, I want us to step back a minute and think back to when we were talking really early this morning about how teaching with strengths builds belonging and connection and well-being and identity. And that we actually need to have the preconditions for all of these things set up in our classrooms first. So we're going to look a little bit about the conditions needed in a classroom for us to notice strengths, for kids to notice strengths, and for kids to feel safe and calm and affirmed in noticing and using their own strengths. So we've got 3 strategies to share here. First is all about checking in. So what we do maybe at the start of the day or the start of a lesson. The second is about what we can do during lessons when things are interesting. And the third is what the Americans call exit tickets, what we can do at the end of a lesson or end of a day that kind of closes the loop on those conditions. So let's have a little dig in. First of all, we have some checking in resources. Many of you will be familiar with the zones of regulation, a fantastic tool to help students identify how they are doing, not to say you need to be in the green zone. All right, so this is really an identification tool, not a behavior management tool that says one zone is better than another zone. So first of all, we're basing this on zones of regulation with the understanding that these zones are just real and valid for kids. So creating with students, with whānau as well, we can use visual images to work with students to identify words and pictures that they associate with particular zones and strategies they can use when they are really feeling that zone. Sometimes it's all right to be in that red zone where things are really big and we don't need any support or any action. We're just cruising in that zone, and that's okay. But sometimes we want to release all that energy or move into a different zone, or we need to flip something. So this could be where in Dean's where there's some disputational action happening. So we identify with students what actions they could take, and we use visuals because we know that that's a really effective strategy for our neurodivergent kids, more effective than having the words. We have the visuals to remind them of things they could try should they need additional support in that zone. So acknowledging the zones rather than saying you need to be in a specific zone, working with students and with whānau as appropriate to develop strategies for in that zone, using visuals. So all of this is acknowledging and affirming and keeping that checking in with emotions, checking in with how people are doing. This could be developed with individuals. It could be developed with a group. You could do it as a whole class. Each student could develop their own one depending on your age group. But setting up those emotional conditions for safety, for belonging, for that sense of connection, that sense of someone gets it, someone gets me. Our champion spoke so eloquently about that one teacher who saw them. And this could be a great way for you to be that one teacher. I wish every teacher could be that one teacher that really sees a child. This could be such a great inroads into seeing that child. So that's one strategy you can try out. Next one is just simply called a Take 5 card. And the idea is that we know that you can set up the conditions for feeling safe and feeling affirmed and feeling acknowledged, but that for sometimes our neurodivergent kids, the busy life of a classroom is just all a bit much. You'll know that yourselves as teachers, as adults, that sometimes the world is a bit much and you just need to go, okay, hang on a minute, just let's all wait a minute. So this is a strategy that enables kids to take 5 in a really straightforward, non-obtrusive way. Right, again with visuals, we've got 5, that's easy. 5 minutes, 5 different strategies. So these are ones we have suggested, but you could take this idea and add in little ideas that work best for your learners, but this is what we have put together. So the things kids can do in a 5-minute break, should they need it: play a game on your own, draw, write, doodle, scribble, whatever, read, or just sit and chill quietly on the couch or in a quiet area. Okay, so they have 5 strategies that they can try out for 5 minutes should they need a wee break. This visual sits on the board at the front of the room. It's on a laminated card, and if a child needs a break, all they do is pick up the card, wave it at the teacher, not in an obnoxious way, just, hey, having 5. The teacher sets a 5-minute timer. Off the child goes, has their 5-minute break. If other kids notice this happening, having that card as a real visual cue for them as well to say, hey, that kid just needs a bit of a 5-minute break. I'm just going to be aware of that. Off they go for their 5-minute break. Once it's done, they come back and they check in and go, okay, all good now. Sometimes another 5-minute break would be useful. That's okay. We just start the process again. It's a really simple way of acknowledging and responding to overwhelm before it gets to crisis point. It's a great way to make sure that those internal negative beliefs, maybe that sense of sensory overwhelm or social overwhelm, doesn't get to a boiling over point and stays at a calm and manageable zone for your classroom. So we've got that resource for you. You can also download much more fulsome instructions for how we manage this in a classroom, but it's just another strategy where you can make sure your class is calm, patient, everyone's aware of what's going on in a structured way. Okay. What Americans call exit tickets. It's just closing that loop. We've checked in at the start of a day or start of a lesson. We know that we've got safety valves. We know we've got timeout should we need it in a really structured way during the day or during a lesson. And closing that loop, we're going to look back and go, oh, okay, what did happen today? How did it go? Really simple idea. These lovely little reflection clouds. There's about 20 different starters in the resource that we've put together for you. Here's just a tiny sample. And it's just a case of popping a selection of them out or handing them out as physical resources, whichever works best, giving students time to think and process in their own minds first. Another really concrete way to get some disputational evidence going on. Sometimes our neurodivergent kids and all kids, to be fair, and adults can focus on that one bad thing that they think happened during the day, that one time when they fell over or they did something that was a bit odd or whatever it was. Our brains are primed to hook into something bad that happened. This is a way that we can focus on the whole day, the big picture of the day, refocus on something more positive so that kids don't keep mulling over, ruminating on that one bad thing. It's also a way that you can build that reflective community in your classroom so that students are listening to each other, thinking with each other, disputing with each other, because we know that sense of connection and identity doesn't happen alone, does it? It happens in a group, right? So you can use these reflection clouds as exit tickets where students can have some silent thinking time, share if they would like to share, not share if they would not like to share, but also it can be your pathway into hearing those self-beliefs, interrupting them if you get the opportunity to, supporting kids to interrupt each other's negative beliefs as well, if that works for you. So 3 simple strategies for setting up those practical conditions where students feel safe to bring their strengths to the table, their weird and wonderful strengths and interests and passions often, because it does require that emotionally safe, connected environment where students know that they are safe and acknowledged and affirmed, and it gives you those opportunities to dispute, which I think is fantastic. Okay, once we've got these beautiful conditions set up, next we need to get really good at noticing strengths. Just like in Holly's presentation, this is the spotting end of it. This is where we look at what's going on for a student. We get really good at thinking through, what is this telling me? We look beyond academic achievement because that's the low-hanging fruit of noticing strengths, and we try and find those underlying abilities and qualities. Now, something that Holly really pointed out when she was talking about spotting was that idea of looking past behavior and the impact it has on you. Is this child really trying to annoy me right now? And thinking it through much more carefully. So we've got some structured guidance around that, and that's our neurodiverse learner characteristics chart. This has been put together by the Neurodiversity in Education Coalition, so with the support of ADHD NZ, Autism NZ, and the Dyslexia Foundation. You can download that resource in entirety in the download section here. I'm just going to show you around a little piece of it. I'm not going to talk you through the whole thing. You can have a look at it in your own time, but I'll just show you around a little piece of it. So what we've put together is some possible strengths and some possible sticking points that you might notice. So, for instance, when Holly was talking through some of those examples, we can notice things that look like problems. All right. So that's your smart aleck kiddo who might appear to be mocking you. That's a problem. What could be the possible strength that that child is showing? This chart helps you work through that. So it helps teachers actually think, okay, well, here's a problem. For instance, applies creative thinking when logical thinking would be needed. So maybe in a maths context, a child is thinking really creatively when actually a logical step-by-step process might be more useful, or vice versa. They are doing their maths equations when they're meant to be doing the art of butterflies. You can recognize it as a sticking point. And then you can flip back and go, that's actually showing me these strengths in terms of thinking. So it helps teachers reframe, get a sense of the strength that might be hiding in that nitty-gritty little issue that you're noticing. So we've got strengths and sticking points. We also have a range of different categories. I've just shown the first two here, thinking and learning, because that's our bread and butter as teachers, isn't it? But it also goes into processing, interacting with peers, interacting with adults, interacting with the learning environment, busybodies that are doing things all the time. So there's a range of categories, and in each category, some ideas about strengths and sticking points. It's not comprehensive. It's not the list to end all lists, because there is no such thing, but it does give you some great starting points. Now, the great thing about this chart is this section here, respond. So Holly talked us through that process of spotting, which is what we're just doing here, and then jotting, making sure we're recording that somewhere, and plotting. And these ideas on the chart in the respond section directly relate to that idea of plotting. What is it we're going to do that might develop those strengths? Notice them, affirm them. What could we try and do? And again, we've given you a whole pile of ideas that are our big bang for buck ideas that we put together with the coalition. Again, it's not everything you could ever do. It's just some starting points and a great activity that you could do as a team or as an individual or as a whole staff is think, okay, what else can we add to this list? What other ideas do we have for that plotting to figure out a next step, something we're going to do? So our neurodiverse learning characteristics chart has recognizing some things you might recognize in terms of strengths and sticking points in different categories that you might notice, and then also ways that you can try out and respond. We'd love for teachers in schools to be using this as a great starting point for that process of spotting, jotting, and plotting. Okay, so that's one way that you can use in a really structured way to be noticing strengths. Another one, and that's a teacher-facing way. This is a student-facing strategy, because as much as us as adults, we can notice their strengths and we can reflect that back. Oh, Johnny, you gave me a great creative reason for no homework. I'm noticing your creativity. That's wonderful. Ultimately, we want kids to be doing that. We want them to understand their own incredible strengths, just like Maria and Isabella. Owning the fact that for Maria, amazing memory, incredible objectivity, incredible visualization skill in music, amazing. And for Isabella, that creativity that she's bringing to bear on real life problems. We want students understanding their strengths. That is what is going to help them leverage those strengths in that long game, their whole lives. So this is a student-facing strengths inventory. A whole lot of different categories again. And because we developed this in conjunction with the neurodiverse learning characteristics chart, the categories line up. So you could sit down as a teacher and go, oh, I'm noticing these things. I'm noticing these strengths and these sticking points about this particular child. And then sit and work with the child and get them to go through this learning strengths inventory, tick it off, use a highlighter pen, develop a scale or symbols or color in, whatever. Then you've got two incredible sources of information. You've got from the horse's mouth and your observations. Invite parents into that loop too. And then, oh my goodness, you are getting such rich information for your spotting. And then because this is a resource that you could have on paper, you've got an automatic jotting right there in front of you. Now, the interesting thing we've noticed about using this inventory with our neurodivergent kids is they will tear it apart and put it back together again. I'll give you an example. So let's go just in this learning area where we're saying to kids, right, just tick off some of your strengths, really simple. And they might look at this one. I can learn easily in some areas. Now, for a neurodivergent kid, they might go, yes, but not when I'm like this, or yes, and only when the conditions are like this. Kind of sometimes, maybe it depends. They're going to work their way around and through these statements and add qualifiers and add buts and maybes and ifs. And that is absolutely brilliant. That is exactly what you want to see happening. Probably the thing you don't want to see happening is kids just going, yes, no, right? That's a little bit on the dull end of using this inventory. You want kids to be going, maybe when it's related to docs or texts, maybe, but only if in these conditions, because that is showing you their self-awareness, their understanding of themselves. This could also be used as a great disputational tool as well, where you can help kids dispute some of those negative beliefs that they may be hearing or maybe feeling about themselves. So this is a fantastic student-facing resource. It's in the resources section. You can download it and use it in any way, shape, or form that works best in your context. All right, so we've got the conditions for noticing strengths. Everyone's feeling safe and connected. We are doing some noticing. Us as teachers, kids themselves, we're noticing these strengths. We're getting some great ideas. What do we do to actually get kids developing those strengths, to teach in ways that target those strengths and build them? Much like Holly's example of Maylin, bossy playground, complex roles, etc. How do we get her to develop those strengths of seeing systems, creating roles, creating effective systems? Yeah, using those strengths, building them, because that is ultimately the point of what we do as teachers, isn't it? To develop kids' strengths. So, two strategies here. Number one, we have our project planner that you can download and you can use. This is a way that will structure a strengths-based project that kids can do as individuals or as groups that you can use as a structure around if you're doing something like passion projects or a genius hour. It just gives you another structure. Let me just talk you through a couple of aspects of it quickly. You can download the whole thing, which is a really step-by-step guide. It's student-facing, but teachers can use it in that way. So the point of the project plan is to develop strengths, not to just paddle around and to play in the passion pit, which is great. But this project focuses on developing strengths. So it's up to students and you as teachers who are guiding students to know what those strengths are. So for instance, if Maylin, for instance, was developing a project, she might say, I'm going to explore playground games and how we keep students busy and engaged in the playground. The strength I'm going to develop is that I create great games. Fingers crossed. The new learning I'm going to develop is how I sell those games with students, how I teach students those games, how I deal with rules and things relating to those games. And what I might create is 3 playground games guides. Right, so that might be one way that Maylin, working with you as the teacher, can design a project that specifically identifies those strengths in their context and develops them further. There is an element of creating something at the end expected here, but not a poster, a presentation, a PowerPoint, an essay, a paragraph, how did I change the world statement. It's not a bolt-on creation or a prove yourself creation. It's a valid part of the process, right? I think that is really important, and that's something that I think makes some of those projects that we work with kids on, makes them fall over at the very last step when we bolt on an inauthentic way to demonstrate what's being done. So creating something that is valid and authentic and a natural part of the project is really important. So this project planner, there's much more to it than just this one page. You can download it in the resources section. This project planner steps you and students through a really structured process of how do you develop this? What are you going to do? What do you need to do, etc. This is a longer term project. This isn't it's a wet Thursday afternoon, let's do a project. This is perhaps a term of work once or twice a week. This is a big picture thing. It can be bigger, it can be smaller, but probably the key point is this is an over time development, because strengths don't develop in a day. They take time. That is normally natural. So we need to make sure as teachers we're being patient and we're allocating that time. All right. Here's just another little look at what the project planner looks like. It steps us through exactly what we're going to do. Okay. All right. I'm really excited to also introduce you to MindPlus clubs. Now, MindPlus clubs are online environments for our students, any students, not just ones who are gifted, not just our neurodivergent students, but students, as Holly said, who have a sparkly topic. And I love that expression so much. Any student who, when you say, right, we're going to be doing some maths, they go, yeah, maths is their sparkly topic. Our little Bella with the maths equations, maths would be her sparkly topic. So any student who has a sparkly interest area, we have 10 different clubs for them. They are online. I'll tell you the 10 in a minute. They are online clubs for connecting with other students who share those passions. And they provide some self-paced differently leveled, differently structured learning activities that are outside of the usual New Zealand curriculum. They are deliberately outside of the usual curriculum so that students get the opportunity to learn and do something that is new and different, because we know for our neurodivergent kids, a little bit new, a little bit different piques the interest and it perks up those brains. And they go, oh, okay, something new, something a little bit different. So we have those new and different learning experiences. They are leveled, but not curriculum leveled. They are leveled in terms of where students might be at in their independence and autonomy. So the very beginning levels are taster activities where they just have a little taste of something new and interesting in their area, just a little taste. The next level up is some tutorial activities, and these are really carefully collated tutorials that introduce students to new skills in that area. So an example is, for historians, there's a tutorial about deciding what kind of evidence matters and why it matters. Quite an advanced historical skill, but one that is really useful. So we have tasters, we have tutorials, and then for students who would like a structured program of work, we have a badge program. So they work through 9 or 10 structured activities in the area, and when they complete all 10, they earn a badge. Really straightforward. And then we have the most independent, the most autonomous, and that's a project, a co-designed project that they develop with you or with the parent and work on. Now, like I said, we have 10 club areas, and we have a senior club, which is really for those around about year 7 to 10. And they're called senior clubs because the interaction, the connection in those clubs is much more mature-minded. It's a bit less of the, hey, how's everyone today type interaction from the younger kids, which tends to be pretty playful, which is normal and natural for that age group. The senior clubs tend to be a little bit more intellectually focused. So we have 10 clubs. We have creative writers, we have readers, we have mathematicians, we have scientists, we have historians, we have coders, a very popular club. We have artists and artisans. We have designers. So the designers tend to be the more visually, spatially oriented kids, and the artists are the more create and do type kids. And then we have our Changemakers Club, which is about those kids who are passionate about making change, about social justice, about those kind of big picture issues. And then we have our Dreamers Club, and they are an absolute hoot. Our Dreamers kids are the philosophizers, the thinkers, the world creators, those ones who have big visions and big dreams and big worlds all going on in their minds. It's a lovely, quiet, contemplative space. Now, what we are really excited about with clubs is that we can offer this opportunity for free. We have gained some Ministry of Education funding that enables us to offer clubs for free to schools, to parents, to kids themselves. We're really, really excited about that. And we're excited to see schools using clubs as a way to bring together a like-minded group and to be working together. Now, interestingly, what we're seeing from schools is they bring together a like-minded group, but they're not like-minded historians necessarily or mathematicians. They're like-minded because they have that sparkle for whatever club it is. They just have that burning passion to do whatever it is they love doing. So can you imagine the energy in the room with a like-minded group of 20-something kids who all have a great sparkly interest? Amazing. So MindPlus Clubs, there's lots of information on our website about MindPlus Clubs, and in the resources we'll include the sign up link. Really easy to sign up. We just need a little bit of information, a little bit of demographic information, and a little bit of the why. Why is your child or this student really interested in this area? Really easy, and it's free. We're very excited about that. Okay, so we have talked through setting up the conditions, noticing those strengths, teachers and students. We've talked about a couple of different ways to develop those strengths. And that is it from us today. What I'm really interested in you doing now is taking some time with our notes page that you can download, or a pencil and paper, or an art experience, whatever way works best for you. I want you to take the ideas that are buzzing around in your head now, and I want you to capture them in some way. I want you to think about, what am I going to do in my classroom? I wish it was tomorrow. But next term, when school starts back, what are you going to do that spotlights strengths? What's your change in your practice going to be? Do you have a plan? Can you create a plan? What are some things you would love to try out? What's something you want to share with colleagues? Get it all out of your head onto some form of recording. Take a minute to do that. Do it with coffee, do it with cake, do it in a way that works for you. We're going to share all of the resources from this session and all of our sessions on our website over the next week. We'll be emailing you with a link to that. Now, early next term, we're going to email you again and ask you for some feedback. And the reason why we're waiting until next term is we want you to try some things. We want you to get into your classroom, do some spotting, do some plotting, try out some of the strategies. We're really interested to hear back about the impact that thinking about strengths has on you as a teacher and your students. If you are working with teachers, for instance, as an RTLB, what's the impact these ideas have on your practice with teachers? We'd love to hear back from you, but later next term, once it's had some time to sink in. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I really admire your tenacity in joining us on the first day of the school holidays. I hope you have a really restful and restorative break. Have a great rest of the time. Thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.